You know how sometimes you get a postcard from someone on vacation and the picture is always perfect? Sun hitting the beach just so, or a crooked little alley in an old town where the laundry hangs like a second sky. And on the back, they've written 3 lines that are half in the margins because they ran out of space. Having an amazing time. Wish you were here. P.S. The gelato is better than you said it would be. And that's it. No details on where they're staying or how they got there. Just a little nudge that they're somewhere good and you could be too. Sometimes that's exactly how the universe works. No full itinerary or detailed plan, just a moment, a sentence, and a tug on the sleeve. And then it's up to you to notice. Welcome to the Inspiritude Effect, the podcast where spirit meets story and dreams really do come true. I'm your host, Kathy Sherwood, and around here we talk about transformation in every form. Spiritual nudges, reinventions, purpose, money, relationships, and everything to help make a fantastic life. Sometimes it's just me. Sometimes we bring in guests and co-hosts with their own kind of magic. But every time, it's a place to come back to yourself. So let's begin. Let's start with Laura. Laura used to tell me she never got signs. Not the feathers, not the numbers, not the mysterious whispers that people often claim arrive right before their whole life changes. She used to say she thought the universe must have lost her address, which, fair, she had moved 7 times in 3 years. Anyway, one afternoon, she's in line for coffee, staring at the pastry case like it holds the secrets of the universe, which in a way, it might. When the woman in front of her turns around and says, in this completely casual tone, "You look like someone who's about to do something big. Don't wait too long." So no explanation, just a stranger with a paper cup and a sentence that landed like a message from somewhere beyond that moment. Laura laughed it off at the time, but it stuck with her and she wrote it down, which is actually step 1 with these things. Write it down even if you think it's nonsense. The funny part? Laura almost didn't go to that cafe. She'd been craving the muffins from the bakery across town, the ones with her favorite streusel topping, but she didn't want to fight for parking. So if she'd had gone for the muffins, she might have missed it altogether. Anyway, a few days later, she gets an email about a last-minute cancellation in an art retreat she'd been quietly stalking online for years. This was something she bookmarked, but never booked. There was always a reason not to. Work, money, the belief that it was indulgent. She'd loved painting once. In another life, it had been how she made sense of the world. But that part of her had been folded away when the job got serious and the responsibilities piled up. She hadn't picked up a brush in over a decade. Yet something in her said yes. She flew across the country with a suitcase full of doubt and an old sketchbook she found in the back of a drawer. The first morning, she actually cried just from the smell of turpentine. Not because of the art itself, but because something familiar had come rushing back. A version of herself that had been waiting patiently under layers of doing and proving and coping. Somewhere between the blue paint and the gold leaf and the gentle chaos of letting herself play, she remembered what it felt like to be connected. Not useful, not productive, just alive. And that was the shift. She said it was like her life had been held in a single pose for far too long, and this retreat let her breathe into a new shape. And later, when she thought back to that woman in the cafe, she realized that stranger wasn't predicting some big outer achievement. She was naming a moment of inner alignment. The big thing wasn't what Laura was about to do, it was who she was about to become. But not every message comes from a stranger in a cafe. Sometimes the universe works in sequences. One sign to get your attention, another to ask a question, and then a flood of confirmations if you're willing to keep looking. That's how it happened for a friend of mine. She wasn't one to leap without a plan. Like, she liked backup options, exit rows, refund policies. The idea of following signs made her vaguely uncomfortable, like it required some mystical level of certainty she didn't think she had access to. Then this phrase started showing up for her. Leap and the net will appear. She first saw it on a framed print in an office supply store and almost bought it ironically. Then she heard it on a podcast she only listened to because her usual one wouldn't load. Then again, scrawled in sidewalk chalk outside her apartment as if the universe had decided to go full kindergarten teacher with the message. By that third time, even she had to admit it was curious. That night, she pulled out her journal, the one that she only used when things felt too big for a to-do list, and wrote one question. Where am I hesitating? The answer surprised her. Lisbon. She'd wanted to go for years, not forever, not to move, but just to visit. But every time she got close to planning it, she'd find a reason not to. The timing wasn't right. The flights were too expensive. Who takes a whole week off just to wander a European city alone anyway? Still, the idea never left. She had a Pinterest board, a saved list of restaurants, even had a half-filled visa application from back when she thought she might apply for a remote worker program. But logic always won, every time. Until now. Because once she'd named it, Lisbon, it was like the signs multiplied. A friend mentioned it out of nowhere. A novel she'd picked up had scenes set there. She walked by a travel agency she'd never noticed before, and there in the window was a photo of the city's tiled streets and yellow trams, captioned with the quote she'd seen on the picture, "Leap and the net will appear." At first she wondered if she was just noticing it more, but instead of talking herself out of it like she usually did, she decided to stay curious. She started tracking how it made her feel. And every time the signs showed up, she lit up. Not in a rational way, but in a truth lives here kind of way. The kind of tug that bypasses your brain and lands somewhere behind your ribs. So she booked the flight. No big announcement, no perfectly timed sabbatical, just a quiet, clear yes. And the moment she arrived, something in her softened. The light was warmer than she'd imagined, the rhythm slower. The fear that she'd felt at the airport dissolved somewhere between a tiled alleyway and her first espresso ordered in absolutely terrible Portuguese. She didn't need this trip to be profound. She didn't go looking for any kind of deep transformation, but it found her anyway. In the space she'd created by finally saying yes to herself. That trip changed how she chose to live her life. It showed her her willingness to trust what felt good, even if it didn't make perfect sense, actually worked out in her favor. So she stopped waiting for proof and started following the threads of what lit her up. And she had an amazing time on that trip, doing something she'd postponed for years that she could have jumped into before, but she listened not to the universe's nudges, but to her rational self instead. And the experience gave her a deeper kind of permission than she'd ever allowed before. The next time the signs showed up, she didn't hesitate. She already knew they were real because she'd seen where they could lead. So the signs didn't guarantee anything. What convinced her was how they made her feel. Excited, open, expansive. That was the difference between intuition and noise. Not every sign leads to a life-changing adventure, of course, and not every whisper is worth chasing. Sometimes we confuse anxiety for intuition. Let me tell you about Sandy. There's a difference between following the energy of something alive in you and grasping at signs because you're afraid to decide. One expands you, the other keeps you spinning. Sandy was lovely, smart, curious, a seeker. but she saw signs in everything. If her toast landed butter side up, definite sign she was on the right path. If her phone battery died, clearly the universe was telling her to cancel that meeting. She even broke up with a guy because she saw his name on the side of a plumbing truck that was parked next to a stop sign. She took it as a literal message, stop. We gently pointed out it might just be coincidence, but she wasn't convinced. And then that's the tricky part. So when you're chasing signs out of fear or doubt, everything starts to look like a signal. But that's not clarity, that's grasping. And that usually leads in circles. I think Sandy was craving reassurance. I mean, aren't we all sometimes? But when everything becomes a message, it gets harder to tell what's real. The postcards from the universe stand out. They repeat. They tug something deeper in you. They stir more than just superstition. And in case you're wondering what that might look like, here are some of the more common ways people say signs show up for them. A phrase that keeps coming up in conversation or books. A quote or lyric that lands just a little too perfectly. Numbers that repeat, like 1111 or 333. Feathers, coins, or animals crossing your path in strange ways. An unexpected invitation or opportunity. A dream you can't shake. Or a stranger saying something that hits you like a truth you hadn't named yet. And it's not always mystical. Sometimes it's very subtle, but it stays with you, and that's often the clue. It doesn't come with stress or pressure. Real signs don't shout over your intuition, they amplify it. If you feel calmer, clearer, or even quietly excited when it shows up, that's definitely worth listening to. If you feel frantic, panicked, or desperate to decode it, that's usually noise. So if you've been wondering whether something's trying to reach you, maybe it is. The question isn't always what it means, but what it stirs in you. Some signs come softly, repeating themselves like a whisper with a rhythm, just loud enough to draw your attention. Others arrive all at once, sharp and undeniable, like a crash that changes everything, especially if you ignore them the first few times around. And that's the part that we're not usually told. It's fine if you miss a sign. What's meant for you is persistent. If you walk right past it the first time, it'll loop back around. And sometimes it won't whisper anymore. It'll blow a foghorn in your ear. And I know that because it happened to me. Many years ago, I had built a business I was genuinely proud of. I had a solid team, a great reputation, and clients who really appreciated what we did. On paper, it looked like everything I'd worked for, and for a while it was. Then one morning I saw a quote on a coffee cup. Be careful what you're good at because you might just end up doing it for the rest of your life. And that one hit me hard. It stayed with me. Prior to that, I'd been noticing it was getting harder to get out of bed in the morning and be excited for the workday ahead. The praise from clients that used to make me feel really proud of what we'd created didn't quite land the same way. And I had this quiet but growing sense that I was meant for something more, something different. I had heard the whisper, I got the message, and then I ignored it for 7 more years, despite that nudge getting stronger and stronger every single time it came up. Until, of course, the universe stepped in and made it impossible for me to keep going as I had been. A series of events led to me shutting down the whole business. And not that that was convenient or good timing or even the least bit comfortable when it happened. It was, however, a decision I knew I had to make. I'd had to make it for a long time, but I'd refused to do it on my own. My stubborn stick-to-itness and don't fix it if it's not broken attitude kept me in a place that was slowly eroding the joy and the meaning in my life for far too long. So I guess I needed God to take the reins and not so gently kick me out of my comfort zone. Today, however, I'm doing work that feels so deeply aligned, so much more meaningful than anything I've ever done before. And I can honestly say that if I hadn't been pushed, I might never have given myself permission to walk away from what I'd created before. The signs were there, yes. I just wasn't ready to listen. But the invitation came back and back and back until finally it came in a form I couldn't ignore. And that's the thing. The timing might shift, the circumstances might change, but the invitation has a way of finding you again. Pro tip, though, don't wait for the screams. Take some inspired action when the nudge is still a gentle whisper. It's so much more enjoyable that way. So how do you know then when to follow something? Think of it like building a new kind of strength, not in your arms, but in your awareness. It's also kind of like checking the mail. Every day, something new could arrive, but it only matters if you open it. So 1, notice the repeats. If a message shows up 3 times in a short span, consider it postage paid. 2, track your reactions. Are you excited? Uncomfortable? Either one could actually be your yes. It's the neutral flat line that's probably a no. And 3, check your why. Are you following this because it genuinely lights you up or because you want to save yourself from making a hard choice? Signs support your power. They don't replace it. And 4, take a micro step. Something small, like a reply email, a 5-minute brainstorm, a call. See if the energy expands or fizzles. The more you practice, the clearer it gets. You stop second guessing. You recognize what feels true, like spotting a familiar handwriting the moment you pick up the envelope. So I offer you this challenge. If something's been nudging at the edge of your awareness, not loud maybe, but steady, don't brush it off. You don't have to make a big leap today. Just pause, notice. Maybe write it down and tuck it somewhere safe. Because one day you might look back and see that was when the dream life began. If that quiet tap has been showing up more often lately, maybe it's time to listen a little closer. You'll find something in the show notes here to help you tune in more clearly, a simple guide to begin unpacking those nudges and seeing what they're pointing toward. And if you'd like to explore it more personally, to talk through what's coming up for you, there's a link to book a time for us to connect. I would love to support you. And I'll tell you this, the more I've practiced noticing the nudges and allowing myself to follow them, the more they've led to the kind of moments I'll never forget. Not ones from a vision board necessarily, or part of some master plan, but life-changing experiences that came from saying yes to the little tugs, the ones that didn't make perfect sense, but felt like they might lead somewhere good. So here's my final thought. Get good at listening. Get better at discerning. And be brave enough to follow the signs. Not because they guarantee anything, but because they guide you to what's most alive. And what the heck, if you misread a few in the beginning, that's okay. Worst case, an unplanned adventure. Best case, a story that reminds you you're always being led. Thanks for tuning in to the Inspiritude Effect. If this sparked something in you and you'd like to come hang out for more inspiring conversations, hit follow and share it with someone who would benefit from walking their own inspired path. In the show notes of each episode, you'll find links to aligned resources and content that will keep you moving toward your best life. And remember, the whisper is never random. Let it lead. You belong where it's taken you.